Alright everyone, welcome back again to more Misericorde. The crux of the matter is that Sister Hedwig will suffer no disadvantage going second. Needless to say, Adela trounced me. I felt confident for a move or two, but it became clear quite quickly that I was out of my depth. Well, I think that was not bad for a beginner. You got her in, 20 moves? That is better than I would expect from a player who only learned what chess is a week or so ago. That's a good point. Hedwig, walk me through your strategy. Well, I don't really know, to tell you the truth. I was mostly just reacting to your moves. Is that so? That explain it. Really now? If you are only reacting to me, it's no wonder I won. That would follow, I suppose. I am saying the pace of the whole game. Eventually, you must make your own move. You must force me to react to you. So we just act and react back and forth? Until somebody wins? I believe that is the game, yes. Catherine? Yes, Hedwig. Because we are not competing to see who can make the single best decision. Not just competing to see who can survive the most moves, but to see whose strategy can adapt and overcome everything your opponent throws at you. Okay, well, that's true. I can attest to that. That's you make a good point. You make a good point. Two souls locked in a complicated and deadly dance. Pure romance. So I've heard you say. That's very interesting. Thank you. Hedwig, would you mind if I played around? Watching you has got me in the mood to play. Oh, yes, of course. A fine idea. Rotating chairs. Who can stay in the victor's seat the longest? I can guess. You are welcome to challenge me as well, Sister Flora, if you feel you deserve to dethrone me. Flora rolled her eyes as I got up to offer my seat to Moira. The tight group that had formed around the table to watch Adela and I play scattered somewhat. Margaret walked over to the shelf to peruse the entertainment on offer, and Catherine sat down closer to the fireplace. She brought a wineskin with her, and poured herself another cup as soon as she was situated. I craned my neck over Charity's shoulder to try and watch Moira and Adela's game. I found myself surprisingly eager to learn some new tips. However, I was quickly interrupted by Catherine calling from across the room. Hedwig, have a drink with me. Oh, see? Perfect timing. She didn't even have to try and get close to her. She's doing the work for her. Oh, yes. Of course. I pulled up a chair next to her as she poured me a cup of wine. There we are. This is good stuff. It's very flavorful. It's made here, you know. It's the only reason this wretched place exists. The only reason? Surely that's not true. Abbeys are a source of wine and money. And absolution for people willing to give them money. Believe me, I'm well acquainted with how these places really work. You and I are very similar, if you can believe it. I do apologize if I ever made you feel lesser than some of the others. Not at all. I was once like you, alone and confused in a place very different from what I was used to. Of course, you left your position by choice, but nonetheless, I could not correct her, especially as this topic had nearly bubbled over very recently. But I wanted to, desperately. I, on the other hand, was ripped from a perfectly comfortable life for a variety of unjust reasons. You were forced to become a nun? That's not right. I mean, I would choose no other life for myself, but my goodness, you really were locked away for a long time. That is quite common, even if my particular circumstances are outstandingly unfair. It's a very easy way for a family to get rid of a woman they're not fond of. I was once the lady of a great house, which came, of course, with a certain nasty politics of its own. In that aspect, it was not all that different from living here. Really? The politicking, just the politicking. The clothes, the jewels, the freedom. I'd put up with the ghastly parlor games to have all that back. I wasn't sure what politicking at the Abbey she was referring to, but this was no time to get hung up on little details. So what happened? If you don't mind my asking. I stepped on some of the wrong toes in high society, put some noses out of joint, and was accused of some unsavory things I'd rather not repeat. And so I was offered the choice of facing the court and likely execution, or taking the vows. I chose the latter. At least I can still grab onto the barest threads of life's great pleasures here occasionally. She took a deep sip of her drink. Well, that just isn't right. A criticism of the church. Goodness, we'll make a sea dog of you yet. I didn't say that. But this happens often. It does sound like some people abuse the content of the monastery. I think shuffling people out of sight might be the content of the monastery. Come now, that can't be true. Monasteries do wonderful things. They're centers of prayer, research, and rigorous academic study, and we help those in need. It's an important calling. Do we do any of that here? How many people in need do we help all the way up on this hill? There isn't another village for miles, and the fine folk of Limbarrow would have to trek up the mountain to get here. Perhaps Limbarrow Tor Abbey is more of a monastery for prayer and learning and so on. Ho ho! Present company excluded, of course, but I don't think much earnest prayer emanates from these halls. Nor do I think we are likely to be responsible for any academic or scholarly pursuits of note anytime soon. Catherine II would have argued otherwise, of course. She desperately wanted all of us to have amusing little projects. She was constantly pursuing some sort of greatness, whether for herself or the whole abbey. What did she want for you? She desperately wanted to get me to act in one of her little performances. She said I had a natural disposition for it. Did you ever take her up on it? Once or twice. I did not hate it, but acting for an audience of just a few other nuns didn't give me much satisfaction. Still, that sounds very sweet. I should have liked to have watched one of those performances. You are too sweet. Too kind. We'll beat that out of you eventually. She chuckled dryly and reached for the wineskin to pour herself another cup. But now that she's gone, the only product of note here is the wine. And when Marta eventually pops it, grim, I know, but I'm just being realistic. That'll be the last of any worth this place had gone. When the wine dries up, so will we. Speaking of. She shook the wineskin and it flopped back and forth unceremoniously. Is that one dead? Goodness, you made me jump. Sorry. I was just coming over to see if you want another. Oh, you are positively angelic. Margaret grinned ever so slightly and began pouring out of much fuller looking wineskin than the deflated lump Catherine was holding. I noticed that Catherine was beginning to look a little rosy in the cheeks. I felt dastardly even considering this, but if there was ever a time to ask her about James... Wonderful. Actually, that's the perfect time. Go all in. This reminds me. We haven't had a proper wake for Unbelievable. Uh-oh, someone got pissed, someone lost. Flora was holding the platter of meat and staggering on one leg. She looked surprised that she had managed to catch the food at all. The chess pieces had clattered to the floor all around the pair of players. Adele looked furious. Moira, however, was clearly trying her hardest not to laugh out loud. Catherine, Margaret, and I all hurried over to see what all the fuss was about. I'm sorry, Adela, but it's true. What on earth did you do? She used underhanded tactics to try and eke out a pathetic victory. Oh, come now. I was just playing normally. And how's that? She was taking every piece possible, whether it was logical to do so or not. Oh no, here we go. Not another argument about bloody maiden's chess again. I wasn't trying to do anything malicious. I just captured a lot of pieces, I suppose. You captured every time it was remotely possible, even if it was not strategically important. Violence for the sake of violence. Total barbarism. Passionless, ugly, brutality. Was it really every time it was possible? Yes, do not pretend otherwise. Oh dear. Hand on your heart. I promise I was not playing by maiden's rules on purpose. Hand on your heart, hand on heart. I was just, eager? Eager? Eager to prove myself. You're very good at chess. I thought that being aggressive would be my best strategy. That could hardly be called a strategy. You and Hedwig played just the same. Well, there is one small difference. I won. Raucous laughter went up from all the sisters, all except Adela, who looked like she might be in need of a physically restrained from leaping onto Mara like one of the bears Angela was so worried about. I demand a rematch. A rematch where we understand we are playing the same game by the same rules. The rules of real chess, not this oafish perversion. It will make you happy. We all set to work riding the table and finding all the scattered pieces that have found their way across the room. Any requests? Margaret had managed to sneak up behind me as I bent over picking up a wayward pawn. Gah! Sorry. I stood up and turned around to see her idly strumming the bulbous wooden instrument. I think it's about time for some music. Is there anything you'd like to hear? I bit my lip. I was not sure how to answer this question without something icier than I wanted to be at the moment. I was trying to make friends, not alienate anyone more than I already had. Oh, silly question. My apologies. Well, not silly. I appreciate it. Just, they really should have given you an instrument in there. A flute, perhaps. I never felt like I needed one. It might have been fun, though. She started plucking the strings and bobbing up and down, a slight grin emerging on her lips. She swayed side to side, a little, but kept her eyes on me the whole time. Another silly question, but I may as well go for it. You do know what music is, right? Of course I do. I heard it occasionally as a little girl, and there's lots of it mentioned in the Bible. Joyful noise, yes. I'd be curious to know what you remember from before you were interred, though. Well, I vaguely remember one about summer. Summer is Ikumenin? That must be it. That's quite old. That's something Marta would have considered out of fashion. Well, I never claimed to have been a particularly fashionable child. Yes, that's the one. It's a fun one. Want to sing it? Oh no, Everyone. A little musical accompaniment for this clash of armies, yes? I flushed red as everyone turned to look at us. All of the pieces have returned to the chessboard. The sisters were crowded around, save for the pawn I held in my hand. Adela held open her and looked at me expectantly. Instinctively, I tossed it. She snatched it out of midair and gave me a little smile as a cheer went up from around the room. Margaret played a single note. Perhaps it was the wine, or perhaps hearing everyone cheer for my expert chess piece throw had gone to my head, but I did not protest. Instead, Groweth said and bloweth med. Despite my initial bravery, I could feel myself turning redder and redder. However, once Margaret chimed in, the rest of the room did too. In short order, nearly everyone was singing along as Moira and Adela began their second game. I had no idea if I was anywhere close to the right tune or pitch, but it didn't matter. There was something intoxicating about hearing everyone together, loosely guided by Margaret's lute strings. The song lasted for several chess moves. When the song ended, everyone was clapping and laughing. Even Flora looked amused. Her usual frown twisted into something like a smile. It's bloody winter, though. All the more reason for a summer tune. Hear, hear. Cups clunked together as everyone toasted. Moira and Adela's game continued apace. Adela looked like frustration was getting the better of her again. Her moves began to feature loud punctuation. She was practically thrusting her piece into the board. It also looked like playing with a different set of rules was making Moira take things more seriously. She looked thoughtful and took to tenting her fingers under her nose and leaning forward between turns. Even with Moira using her old strategy, the amount of pieces was dwindling fast. Adela was certainly being more aggressive. She had navigated her queen into a dominating position on Moira's side of the board, close to her king. I think I have you. No. Moira slid down her queen further up the board to the side. That is of no help to you. Only a handful of pawns remain on either side, save for each side's king and queen. Adela, however, seemed to be primed to deal a fatal blow. Moira had elected to move her queen further into the right-hand side of the board, presumably to pin Adela's king from afar. But it appeared as though she had moved the critical piece dangerously close to one of Adela's pawns. I think it might be. You have left your queen completely open to me. Well, not entirely. You still have to get a pawn in position to take her. Which I shall do. She slid the pawn next to Moira's queen with dramatic confidence. Are you even playing anymore? Perhaps I have bored you. No, just... I don't know how to put this. You can't take my queen. What do you mean? Of course I can. No, I don't think so. Moira carefully lifted her queen up and then placed it back down the board, directly diagonal to Adela's own advancing queen. What? I must ask again, are you even paying attention? However, a murmur of understanding was passing through the rest of the room. Adela, don't set me up like that. What on earth are you talking about? Are you paying attention? She gestured to the board, pointing at the relative position of her own king and queen and Adela's attacking queen. If you take my queen, my king can't move. I can't rightfully put him in check, can I? Of course not. Wait. Which would result in a stalemate. Is that correct? So perhaps we can agree to a draw. Of all the dirty tricks, Sister Moira, I am shocked. It wasn't a trick. Or rather, it's not like this was my plan, but you were playing really well. This was the only defense I could conjure up. Moira might as well have been pissing on Adela's food in front of her and the way Adela was glaring at her. So, draw? Yes, it is a draw. Another chair went up around the room as Adela begrudgingly shook Moira's hand over the chessboard. I suppose that means both seats are open. Yes, I suppose so. She stood up sulkily and made up for the wineskin that Catherine had left on her chair by the fireplace. Moira vacated her seat too, looking sheepish. Anyone want to take me on? Oh, go on then. I was starting to get a little worried that I would never get a chance to corner Catherine, although at the very least her drinking was not slowing down. As long as I could get to her, I was certain I could get what I needed. The issue at this point seemed to be getting to her at all. Margaret was pacing about the room strumming a pleasant tune on her lute. I could see Flora reaching for a book on the corner shelf. However, when she brought to a chair by the fireplace, she held it over her knee rather than open it to read. Margaret. With a wicked grin, Flora began to beat the book with her palms. A driving rhythm was created. It was one that Margaret clearly knew, as she immediately returned with a lute melody that fit snugly between Flora's makeshift drum beats. Oh. Moira ran over to the shelf and retrieved a small wooden flute. As soon as she had an opening, she began to play along with Margaret and Flora. The tune was a wild and a little jagged, but it was one everyone in the room seemed to know, save for me, of course. Catherine began swaying back and forth in her seat, and I could see Charity's head moving underneath her hood. Adela, however, was breaking into a full-on dance, jumping and twirling like a madwoman. I must admit I was stymied. These people were unrecognizable, and I had no idea what to do. There was no way I was going to dance, and I wasn't particularly interested in getting another chess lesson from my betters. To avoid looking foolish, I did the one thing available to me to feel like I belonged in the room. Drink. I was no stranger to wine. I had it with every meal, even when I was still in Anchoress. But this was a new experience. Nobody in this room was drinking to quench their thirst. They were all drinking for the sake of drinking, chasing a stupor that was expressly discouraged, if not outright forbidden by the text that all of them held sacred. What was I to do? I was conscious enough to understand that this was not the time to proselytize. I closed my eyes briefly to pray that my transgressions would be understood. I was here to seek justice for a murdered woman. I was here to clear an innocent man's shame. The songs kept going and going. It could have been one long, shifting song for all I knew. I didn't recognize any of the tunes this makeshift band was playing, but all of them proved popular with the room. I found myself swaying along with the music without thinking. Adela made her way over to me and... I suppose the best description I can muster up is that she began dancing at me. She got very close to my face. She bumped her hips against mine, almost knocking me over. I held my drink with both hands and held it in front of me like a shield. I had no idea how to dance alone, let alone with a partner. I don't know how to dance. It is easy. You just need to move. I am moving. We were both shouting over the music. Adela laughed and retreated away while still shaking to the beat of Flora's book drum. At the other end of the room, she beckoned to me. I relented, scooting forward, and I honestly can't describe what I did with my legs. I just sort of moved them, kicked them perhaps. I'd rather not dwell on it. Suffice to say, it was enough to pass for dancing, but not good enough to keep Adela and the band members from giggling at me. These are nice memories. I hope I'm not boring you. You most definitely are not, Hedwig. This is interesting. The energy of the night decayed slowly but surely. There had been a steady rotation of sisters between chess games and dancing, but the games of chess were now much less raucous. The dancers, myself included, were now sitting down, and Margaret was the last musician still playing a tune. She stood by the crackling fire, staring into the flames and plucking out a bittersweet tune. Her fingers moved delicately over the strings. The intensity with which she stared into the fireplace gave the impression that she was serenading the flames themselves. That's a really lovely tune. What is it? Thank you. I don't know, really. It's my own. I don't have a name for it. Oh. Well, it's beautiful. She turned away from the fireplace and flashed one of her sad smiles at me. I sometimes wonder if I ever had a single earnest exchange while I was outside of this cell. You and I, as we are here, this is as honest as it can get for me. I am free from reinterpreting whatever flickers across your face as your true intent. Speaking face to face is like reading a book with words that rearrange themselves. Are you gonna ask me what it's about? Well, what's about? The song. It doesn't have words, so what could it possibly be about? Margaret smiled again. It still didn't come across as happy exactly, but there was some warmth in her face this time. Of course. How silly of me. I don't understand. I'm the one who doesn't understand. I keep asking you these questions as if you were anyone else. Am I so different? Compared to these women? She tilted her head towards the others, who were all preoccupied in quiet conversation of their own. Very. None of them see the world quite like you do. That makes me sound a little too important. I didn't say you were better than them. And for that matter, I don't think they're better than you. Everyone here is just different. That's very apt. Very true. And you're different in a very interesting way. We speak the same language, but sometimes I feel like I barely understand anyone. Or that nobody understands you. I felt the same way. And I've often wondered, is the onus to change on you or them? Me. That was a quick answer. Well, why should it be anyone else's responsibility? Very noble. But by that same token, why should it be yours? Because I'm new, and I'm more out of place than they are. There are more of you than me, if that makes sense. More people have lived their lives outside of little rooms. I couldn't possibly demand everyone else to start making concessions for me. That's very interesting. When I asked you what the song meant, what was your first reaction? Inside? In your mind, before you spoke? I thought, how can a song with no words mean anything? My response was earnest, I assure you. You are very honest. Does the music make you feel something, though? It's very sad compared to what you were all playing before. You can tell? That's wonderful. But still, your question is perfectly valid. There are no words, so how could it have any meaning? I came up with this tune when I was feeling rather melancholy. I think the notes match. These notes sound sad to me. I have no idea how I would know that, and even less of an idea of how you might know it. Anyway, it was silly of me to ask, but it does seem like deep down you understood me. It's so funny because these types of conversations are what really interest me the most. Like when you have two characters, or even more so, connecting on a deeper level about almost any subject, as long as it's something they're both understanding and being emphatic to, that they're bonding over, it really hooks me. So music being one of them too. That's fascinating, but I don't understand a word of it. She chuckled. That is the sort of thing me and Catherine used to talk about. Thank you, Hedwig. Is it really? Yes. I must admit I'm cribbing from her work a little here. She asked me these questions almost exactly once upon a time, when I was new. I told her about how, when I was a little girl, it was the hymns that kept me interested in Mass, despite not knowing what any of the lyrics meant. She laughed and said that was proof that God was in the music itself. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I didn't agree. I might still have some complicated thoughts about all of it. But whenever I play music, I think about that. I miss her laugh. She began to pluck a new tune on her instrument. That one sounds a lot more lighthearted. That was one of hers. What I can remember of it anyway. I wish I could recall the whole song. I had no idea how to respond to this and endeavored to move past the evidently raw subject. One forlorn drunkard had been enough for me. Unfortunately, I managed to put my foot in my mouth instead. Margaret, you're from far away, yes? Here we go. Go on. And I may as well be from someplace far away. Are we similar in that regard? Do we have a sort of kinship as outsiders? I lived my whole life in England, Hedwig, as did my father, as did his father, and his mother for that matter. So, no, not particularly. She continued to strum her lute, but I could feel a sucking void in between each note. I'm sorry. To Superior, at the luncheon, I must have misinterpreted. She smiled thinly, with none of the subtle humor her vexatious expressions often betrayed. I could sense that I had tested her patience. The Superior has never once asked me about my life. Keep that in mind in case she told you anything else about me. I must have looked like a fool as I gulped at her and tried to think of something to say. But just then, Hedwig! The sudden intrusion made me jump. I turned around, but I couldn't see where Flora was. Down here. Flora was sprawled out on the stone floor. Her head so close to my foot that I might have tripped had I taken a step to the side. What are you doing on the floor? Convalescing. I feel sick when I stand up, but down here is good. That makes sense. Are you alright? Yes. Yes, this is normal. I think. Catherine said this is normal. I glanced across the room to Catherine, who was sitting at the table looking only slightly more conscious than Flora. If I lay down for long enough, I will feel normal again, and then I can have some more wine. Oh, I think there's plenty left. That's a rather big cask. I bet I could fit it in if I drink the rest of what's in there. But I'd go steady now if I were you. Shh. Shh. I need to ask Hedwig a question. What do you need, Flora? Well, you used to make all those Bibles, yeah? And you know how to make pictures. Do you mean illuminating? Yes, that's what I said. I said illuminating. Illuminating. Yes, Flora. I did a little illuminating. So, 2 ideas. I have 2 ideas for you. Go on then. I can't wait to hear this. Idea number 1. Where is all the gold from that? The gold? The gold from the enumerating. Keep up. You mean the leaf? The gold leaf? Illuminating manuscripts involves a lot of colorful pigments, including gold leaf. I always enjoyed filling in the little details like halos and jewelry with my little brush. I must admit, though, that it wasn't my favorite color to work with. I was partial to the deep blue pigment. It broke out for depictions of certain robes, eyes, and the ocean. Right, where did we keep all that? I'm not sure. It would get brought to me in the little pots every few months. I think the bishop brought them. Fuck! It's not here! I could feel myself turning hot with embarrassment and shock. Flora's drunken demeanor was already knocking me off keel, and her vulgar outburst set my teeth on edge. I don't think so. Sorry, Flora. Did you want to paint with it? No. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. I wanted to steal it. Think about it. We could be rich. We could have split it in half. Half and half. 3 ways. I'm wanting on this ideal too. Fuck. Fair is fair, I suppose. That's... Flora? How could you? Hedwig, I don't think you need to take this very seriously. Plotting to rob the Abbey, or worse, the diocese itself, this is very serious. You're no fun. It's paint, Flora. What Hedwig means is that the gold isn't worth anything when it's paint. Oh. I knew it was too good to be true. Tough luck. What would you even do with all that gold? If it was really gold, I mean. What do you think? Us 3, we get out of this flippin' Abbey. Go someplace far away. She gestured broadly with her hand, I presume to imitate a bird or the wind or something. Ah, bless her. Why would we want to do that? Because I hate it here. Tears started welling up in her eyes. I had no idea what to say. Flora, let's get you up. Come on. She extended a hand down to Flora. I followed suit, although I'm not sure I was much help. We dragged the poor girl to her feet and brought her to one of the chairs by the fireplace. She looked positively sodden. I hate it here so much. There. Surely you don't mean that. Margaret shot me a look, and for the first time ever, I could sense true venom behind her eyes. It was the briefest flash of anger, but it was enough to make me feel like a flower looking up at a boot. Why do you hate it here, Flora? There's nothing to do, and I'm all alone. Margaret reached out and clasped her shoulder. You aren't alone. But I understand. I am, though. There's no one my age here. Nobody talks to me. I don't know what I'm doing here. I never wanted to join a convent. She broke down to little hiccuping sobs. Margaret got down on one knee and squeezed Flora's hand in hers. I was too much of a coward to follow suit. All I could do was stand there stupidly, hoping that some of the immense pity I was feeling would be detectable to Flora and Margaret. I wanted to help, but I had not a single earthly idea of what help looked like. You never had a choice, did you, Flora? Flora shook her head. I miss Catherine. I do too. She She would talk to me. She was you lot's age, but she at least knew how to listen. She was the only one who felt like a real sister to me. I opened my mouth to point out that sister was merely a title, but thought better of it.